Welcome to the Mom Talk Show, where we believe that being an informed mom is key to recognize problems at an early age. As a mom in today's world, facing challenges can be overwhelming, but having the right support can make all the difference. Our mission is to provide helpful and trustworthy information to support you on your parenting journey.
Welcome to Mom Talk, the talk show for mom. Today we're talking about bilingual language development with Becca Yu Lewis. Becca is a speech and language pathologist. She is the owner of Citadel SLP, and she's also my co-host on the podcast Mom Talk. So welcome, Becca. Welcome to Mom Talk.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. Today we're going to talk about bilingualism, and I want to know, my first question is it true that it actually delays speech when a child is learning two languages?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a really common myth. So I get calls all the time from parents worried, well, our family speaks more than one language. Is that going to mess up my child? Are they going to be delayed? And all the research has shown, both for kids who are later considered typically developing and those who may have a developmental disability, that there is no difference. Having more than one language or one language does not delay language development. If they're going to be delayed, they will be delayed. And if they're not delayed, having more than one language is only a benefit.
So, as you know, my family, we're learning English and French in my home, right?
Yes.
So, one way to expose kids is having two parents speaking different languages or two languages.
Yes.
So that's one of the ways. Is there any other ways to expose our children to more than one language?
Yeah, so there's actually lots of different ways. So one way is like yourself, one parent speaks one language, the other parent speaks the other language, either by choice or because that's just what they know. Other times, both parents may speak both languages or multiple languages, and they may choose different times in the day. So maybe dinner time is French, and they'll learn more vocabulary in French during that particular time. In my case, my kids are minimally bilingual because I am born here in Canada, and I speak a little bit of Cantonese, but definitely not to the ability of another adult that knows Cantonese. So my kids know a little bit. And in our case, I've chosen my parents' house as the place where I try my best to use Cantonese, because my husband doesn't speak any of it, and I didn't feel like it was fair in our household to do it that way. So that's another way to do it. So there's not really a right or wrong way to do it. It's what comes naturally, what feels kind of right for the family.
We hear about French immersion, late French immersion. There's also I think, is it Cantonese or Mandarin immersion? I've heard about all kind of immersions. Do you recommend this, or when is this a good idea, specifically if we are not worried about delay in speech?
Yeah, if you're not worried about delay, the exposure to either another language within your family or an immersion program. So we are lucky in our community. We have French immersion, and we also have a Mandarin immersion program in our community as well. Is that gives children the opportunity to be exposed to more than one language. They might not become fluent, but it does give them the opportunity to be exposed to it, and it actually helps their brain develop because they're having more exposure. There's that exposure will prime them for later, later in life. If they've gone through French immersion, but they don't really use it in their day-to-day, they're still more likely to be able to pick it up later or to pick up a completely different language because their brain is primed to speaking more than one language.
Okay. So what you touched there is very interesting, because we hear about this, they speak two languages, so you want to expose them maybe to another one and keep going because they have a brain language. Have you heard this before? They're just so easy about learning so many languages. Some people speak 10 languages.
Yes.
So I know some people has abilities, I guess, better abilities than others to learn languages. But I'm always wondering about that. Is there a time frame to expose our children so it's easier for them to learn another language?
So absolutely. So ideally, the first 4 years of life is a really great time to do lots of exposure. It's not that they can't learn it or that they couldn't become fluent if it's after the age of 4, but there's a lot of development, and our brain is pruning and taking away the things that we're not using. And so there's kind of two parts to that. It's how our brain's absorbing that information, but the other thing is our muscles in our tongue start to differentiate, and there's certain sounds, you can probably think to yourself, well, what sound is really hard to say? Because it's not a sound that French has that you learned in English. And you hear that all the time. There's some common sounds, like R for a lot of Asian languages can be really difficult. They just don't have that sound in their mother tongue, and so it will make it more of an accent, which is still really beautiful, and they can still learn the language, but they won't sound like a native speaker necessarily.
I know what you mean, because there's quite a few words in my family that my kids are struggling a little bit to say properly. It needs a little bit more practice, but they've been hearing French since they were born, right? But my husband is having a hard time. So it's always very, very cute. But I can understand how, even like me trying to say certain words in English, sometimes I need to, like take one, take two. It's not always easy. And also the S's, in English.
Yes.
If there's a plural, an S at the end of a word, you have to say it. But in French, you don't have to say it, because the pronoun is feminine, masculine, or plural. So the pronoun define if the words is plural or not, which that's another ways to look at languages. And I feel because it's so different, your brain starts thinking differently when you speak.
Yes.
Too. Like for me, I have to put my French hat and I have to put my English hat when I speak. Depends which language.
Right.
But I'm sure children that are learning two languages like this are also sometimes like getting mixed. Do they get them mixed up? Like I do sometimes, like I want to say something in French, it comes out in English. And is it something that you see in your practice, or how's that?
Yeah, so, children's brains are so resilient and they're so malleable. Plastic is a word that we kind of use, that there's still so much happening in their brain that just like adults, they can, especially if they're used to speaking more than one language in the household, turn to the maybe wrong person, the parent that doesn't speak the language, and say something in the language that their parent doesn't speak. Everyone can do that. The funny thing is, one of the signs of fluency between multiple languages is actually that what we call code switching. So it's going back and forth between the languages that they speak, potentially within the same sentence. So, if you have any friends or family members where they do speak both English and French, and you may start a sentence in French and then switch over to English, and vice versa. And that's a sign of fluency, that you know both languages well enough to kind of make that quick switch. So when children are making that switch, it doesn't mean that they're confused. It means that they're actually becoming more fluent. They're understanding how to use those two languages together.
I really like it. This is a good little pointer for parents here, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about when we're not sure we want to introduce another language, maybe there's a speech delay. So if we're not sure about it, should we wait? Should we not do it? What happened?
I actually have a funny story for this one. You don't have to wait. Actually, there's research from the University of British Columbia, our local university, that they did a study with autistic children, both monolingual, they speak one language, or bilingual, and tested their vocabulary to see if there was a significant difference. So all the kids were autistic, and it didn't make a difference for them being autistic. Monolingual, bilingual, they were still picking up language at the same rate. So, because of that, then we don't really have to worry about delaying it. So the funny story that I have, working as a speech language pathologist, I see kids at all different types of ages. And at one point in my career, I had a child who was already speaking by the time I had gotten them on my caseload. And when it came time, I think it was kindergarten, we did some testing, they were falling within what we would expect for their age, and I basically had worked myself out of a job. But the parent brought up an issue. They said they get really upset when we speak our home language. And they had cut it out years ago because this child was delayed. And so they weren't using their home language with the child, but between parents, they were still using it. And this was actually making the child upset now that they were understanding so much language, that they weren't understanding what their family is saying. And this is the great part about, having that home language and bilingualism. There's a huge social piece to it within families. You can communicate certain things much better in one language than another. And for this child, they were missing that piece in their mother language, and they felt left out. So they felt really left out. And so we actually used Dora as our example, as lots of people speak more than one language. And our team had lots of bilinguals. So we said, Becca speaks more than one language. This person speaks more than one language. Dora, one of your favorite characters, speak more than one language. And then that helped this child understand that it's okay that they don't know, but it's a great opportunity now to ask to understand. And so, years later, they ended up picking up more of their mother tongue, not nearly as fluent if they had continued from early childhood, but, they were able to communicate a little bit with their family in their mother tongue.
So that's one benefit you just said there. Is there any other one?
There's actually lots, so like I said before, the brain development there. So bilinguals, based on studies, are more creative and more flexible. There's advantages when you're traveling, because if you already speak more than one language, when you go to a country where it speaks that language, you have an automatic advantage because you're able to communicate with the locals, but you're also able to generally pick up new languages a little bit quicker. And so just throughout travel, it does make it a little bit easier. They have found that bilinguals sometimes will make a little bit more money career-wise. They're offered more opportunities because they have that extra skill. So there really is no disadvantage to be multilingual.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Becca, for your time. Becca, if our listeners, people that are with us today, wants to find you, where can they find you?
Well, my website is citadelslp.ca. We're also on social media, so Facebook, we're Citadel Speech, and then on Instagram, we're Citadel SLP.
Thank you, Becca. For everyone that is with us today, to contact us or to view all our available episodes, please go to mom-talk.ca, where also all those episodes are available on our YouTube channel at Mom Talk, and also at the Tri-Cities Community Television. If you're an expert, don't hesitate to contact us. We want to hear from you. Maybe you want to come on the show. So Mom Talk would like to thank our generous sponsor, the Tri-Cities Community Television, and also our community sponsor, La Société Francophone de Maillardville. If you know a mom that would benefit from listening to this episode, please share it with her. Always remember, it's important to laugh, keep learning, cherish your village, and be true to yourself. I'm Genevieve Carl-Lefebvre, and thank you for joining us.
Visit us at mom-talk.ca to access our podcast library and stay up to date with our latest content. Follow us on social media for more tips, hacks, and inspiration. Thank you for joining us on this exciting journey of motherhood.